And good morning. Okay, we're ready to start lesson 71 in grammar. Now, let's see. Yesterday's lesson, we talked about the relative pronouns that begin the adjective phrases. Okay, so today we're going to talk about relative adverbs as well as adjective clauses with understood relatives. All right, so the first part of this, we're just kind of going over things that we already know, just little definitions to make sure that we have all this in our minds. So a phrase is a group of words serving a single grammatical function. It may be a verb phrase, it may be a prepositional phrase, it may be an adjective or adverbial phrase, but it's a phrase. No subject, no predicate. Clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a predicate. An independent clause can stand by itself as a sentence. A dependent clause is a fragment that cannot stand by itself as a sentence, but it still has a subject and a verb. Dependent clauses begin with subordinating words, and those clauses are also known as subordinate clauses. I will never refer to them as that. I will always call them dependent clauses with a subordinating conjunction. It's the same thing. Adjective clauses are also known as relative clauses because they relate to another word in the independent clause. Remember, it's an independent clause with a dependent clause. And these adjective clauses are dependent clauses because remember they start with words, the words who, whom, whose, which, and that. Okay? Now, these three here are not examples of relative pronouns with adjective clauses, which we did yesterday. They're actually, these three here are actually examples of relative adverbs introducing adverb clauses. They refer back to a place, time, or reason in the independent clause. And these are your three key words for relative adverbs: where, when, and why. Okay, so we're going to have to keep these straight. Where, when, and why. Just keep in mind these are adverbial. Okay, so where, when, and why. All right, so this was the very spot where a proud tyrant raised an undying monument to his own vanity. So where a proud tyrant, I guess that would be your phrase, because then you're left with the clause. This was the very spot, let's see, to his own vanity. So I guess it would be where a proud tyrant raised an undying monument. Pardon me. Okay, so the next one, then he was going back to serve his country at a time when death was the usual reward for such devotion. And then the reasons why he vented his ill humor on the soldiers were many. So relative adverbs introduce adverb clauses. They refer back to a place, a time, or a reason. Okay, and that's why we have where, which refers to a place. Time refers to when, or when refers to time, and why refers to the reason. So where, when, and why. So just remember those three. Now, this sentence right here, this was the very spot where a proud tyrant, blah, blah, blah. Here's how they diagrammed that. Now, same thing as yesterday. They just diagrammed the independent clause, which is, this was the very spot. This was the very spot. Okay, and then where a proud tyrant raised an undying monument to his own vanity, I guess was the whole clause or phrase. I mean adverb clause. I keep saying phrase, but I mean clause. So what they do is they're using this dotted line to connect the word to what it's talking about. So it's where is what this is talking about. So this whole thing is talking about the where. And then they just diagram this part to it. So don't let this part get you confused. And like I said, I think I said yesterday, if you read that, any of that diagramming dictionary, which you probably didn't, but you may have glanced over it. But it said in there that not every single diagram will look the same. You might decide to come down and go this way, or you might go up that way. So this is just, these are not exactly how they have to be. Now, this sentence here and this sentence here, we're going to diagram. So let us get ready. Now you should have it in front of you. I don't want to have to keep going back and forth. So we're going to be doing this one. He was going back to serve his country at a time when death, blah, blah, blah. Now I have already diagrammed mine on my page. I did have to refer a couple of times to the answer key, but for the most part I did it myself because I wanted to make sure that I understood it before I taught it to you. So because I haven't done that often. Okay, so make sure you have that statement out in front of you. I actually wrote it on another sheet of paper and I skipped the lines so that I labeled it then. Okay, so let's go ahead and label it. I guess that would probably be the best thing. So he was going back to serve his country. Okay, so our independent clause is he was going back to serve his country. Now, I'm not sure if you say at a time. I don't think at a time goes with this. I think it's just he was going, because if you put at a time, then it's not an independent clause. So I'm just going to say at a time goes with this. But here's your word when. So when death was the usual reward for such devotion, or at a time when death, because you can't put it with the independent clause. It doesn't make sense. So he was going back to serve his country. Okay, that's your main part of your sentence. That's your independent clause, which means we need to diagram it. We need to label it before we diagram it. So our verb then, we have a verb phrase, was going. And then he is our subject. Okay, he was going. Now this is an action verb, so we need to see if we have a direct object. But actually we have something here. I believe this is a, and I get these confused, a gerund, which we studied last week or the week before, and I really was no help on that lesson. I know on those several lessons that we had, the gerunds and the I think it was an infinitive. Now to serve, now to is a preposition, but to serve his country, I believe this is a prepositional phrase. But it's, no, let me rephrase that. This would be, I'm not sure if it's an infinitive. I know an infinitive, I believe, ends with, oh, I can't remember. I need to look back. I'm going to have to look back, girls. I'm so sorry. Okay. Let's just see here. I'm thinking of a verbal. Okay, identifying gerunds and infinitive, easy job. So if they end with ing, they're a gerund. If it has to before it, it makes it an infinitive. Okay, both gerunds as well as infinitives can be objects. Okay, let's go right here. This is where I need to go. Have to remind myself. Okay, to have. Okay, so a gerund would be your verb plus your ing, such as singing, leaving, swimming. An infinitive uses to. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so this would be an infinitive. That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't positively sure. Well, if I can get back to the right page. Okay, so to serve his country, I do believe this is an infinitive. And then at a time is a prepositional phrase. So this will make a little bit more sense when we diagram it, actually, believe it or not. Now, when death was the usual reward for such devotion, that's going to be our adverbial, or what they call an adverb clause, adverb phrase. I think I keep saying that. It's an adverb clause. Okay, so that means that we're going to have a subject and a verb. So on this one, was will be your verb. Who or what was. Death is your subject. Now, death was, this is linking, death was reward, making this a what? PN. And then these are adjectives that go with our predicate nominative. And then for such devotion is a prepositional phrase. This is the only thing I'm having a little trouble with here. But I did diagram it, but I can't remember if the whole thing, if we say that it's a prepositional phrase or if we say if it's an infinitive. I think it's an infinitive because we hold it up. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Okay, so this whole thing here goes with that sentence. So make sure you're looking at it. All right, so this is our main part of our sentence. This is our independent clause. So remember we had he, now make sure you fill this out with me, and then was going. Remember that was our verb phrase. He was going. Back, any idea what part of speech that is? It answers where, so it would be an adverb. Remember, just plain Jane adverbs. An adverb modifies a verb. So he was going back. Now, this right here, because it's up on a pedestal, see how this comes down like it's a prepositional phrase? You know, your preposition would go here and then your object of the preposition would go there. But we're writing this as an infinitive. Now, I said I looked at the teacher book for this. I actually don't have this in the teacher book. So I had to actually do it first. I looked at some other ones in the teacher book, but not these. Okay, so this is our infinitive, to serve. Because remember when it's, I actually think, I cannot remember if we say this is an infinitive or if it has to end in ing. If it has to be a verb that ends in ing. But nonetheless, we're going to put it up like this. I do believe we call this an infinitive. It's a gerund if it ends with ing. This would be an infinitive. Okay, so to serve country. And this would be his. This is an pronoun, or actually an adjective telling whose country. Okay, now we have to put at a time. Okay, so at a time is a prepositional phrase. So your preposition goes here. Now, at a time is a prepositional phrase that tells about when they're going to serve. So it's like an adverbial phrase. So at time is your OP. A is your article. All right, so that's how that should be. Now, this comes down to our relative adverb, which is when. Okay, that refers back. It's relative because it's relating back to the when he was going to serve. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and diagram the rest of that sentence. Remember what we wrote here. We said that the subject of that sentence was death. The verb of that sentence was. And we've got when under was because it's going with the verb. It's modifying the verb. And then remember we had a predicate nominative here. That was reward. And then we have the, and then usual. And then this is the last prepositional phrase, which is for such devotion. So for, and then such devotion. All right, so there's that one. It's kind of hard to see on the screen like this because it's so big, but there you are. That was a hard sentence. Like I said, I couldn't remember. I'm not very good at all with these gerunds and infinitives. I mean, I really need to go back and study those a lot. But Anyway, okay, let's do the next sentence right quick then. This would be, the reasons why he vented his ill humor on the soldiers were many. This is actually a pretty simple one. I did this one in no time by myself, and I don't have anything to check it, so we had to, but thankfully they had it already out like this, so that does help. Okay, so, well, I guess I need to go back up here. We need to label the sentence first. Okay, so the reasons why he vented his ill humor on the soldiers were many. So why he vented his ill humor on the soldiers were many. So the reasons were many. So that's our independent clause. So reasons would be your subject, and then were would be your verb, and then many would be, okay, so reasons were many. This would be your PA. It's a predicate adjective, because remember, adjectives answer how many. All right, and this right here is our adverbial clause, or our adverb clause. So vented would be the verb, he would be the subject, okay? And then, of course, on the soldiers is a prepositional phrase. Okay, this is an action verb, so we'll see if there's a direct object. He vented who or what? He vented humor, so this would be a direct object. It's crazy, isn't it? You've got a direct object and a predicate adjective in the same sentence. That's okay. That just means we're learning a lot. All right, so let's see. Now, if you want to, if you'd like to pause it and try to diagram it yourself first, and then you can check it, that's okay. Otherwise, we'll just do it together. All right, so obviously this tells us that this right here is our independent clause. So we said that our subject is reasons, and the is the article that goes with it, and our verb is were, it's linking, therefore we have a P, in this one we have a PA. Okay, now that part of the sentence was easy peasy. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to come down, and now we're going to diagram the dependent clause, which is an adverbial or adverb clause. All right, so this one's giving us the why, and the word they use is why. And so we have to make sure that we connect that with that, because this clause is giving us the why. Now let's go ahead and diagram it. We said our subject in this was he. Our verb was vented. And on the soldiers. So let's go ahead and put that prepositional phrase. Sometimes it's hard to know where these prepositional phrases go. Like sometimes they go under the subject. Some like here, or well, here they go under the verb. Sometimes they go under the subject. Sometimes they go under the verb. Sometimes they go over here under the direct object or the PA or PN. It's hard to know sometimes, but you know, it's just one of those things we'll have to, you know, keep learning and keep practicing on. But on the soldiers tells about vented, so that's why we put it under there. Okay, and so then he had humor was the direct object on this clause, and then his is an adjective that tells who, whose, and then his ill. Okay, so there's that. All right, that kind of gives us an idea, I guess, so to speak, as to what we're doing. So let's then move on to, okay, this part, I had to look at this and go, wait, what? Because I didn't quite understand it. But this is where it's talking about understood relative adverbs and adjectives. So relative adverbs or pronouns. Okay, so let me, without trying to make you dizzy, I don't know if I move this too fast, it kind of makes me dizzy, I don't know. Okay, so remember that Relative pronouns that introduce adjective clauses are who, whom, whose, which, and that. Okay, and then relative adverbs are where, when, and why. Okay, so remember those. Sometimes you have sentences that have one of those missing. For instance, this sentence, the evil men do lives after them. Now, it took me about 4 times to read that sentence because I was reading it all in different ways until I realized. Now, the word that could go right there. The evil that men do lives after them. Okay, so here's how they would diagram that. Now, you could also, in today's time, you can also use the word which. So the evil which men do or the evil that men do. Which or that, either way, it doesn't matter. But, so they're going to diagram the evil lives after them. Because after them is a prepositional phrase. And then they bring this down and they're going to put that in parentheses because it's understood to be there. Okay, it's just like when we were doing you understood, but this is one of those relative pronouns that's just understood to be there. The evil that, and then the subject and the verb of that sentence is men do. That is actually working as the direct object because it's that men do lives after, well, that men do, and men is your subject, do is your verb, men do what? That. So that would be a direct object, but it's understood to be there. And it comes under the evil because that's what it's talking about. So this would be an adjective clause. How about I read the book you sent me? Okay, now that could go, or which, I read the book that you sent me. Okay, so I read the book. And then that is understood, you sent me. Now, you is the subject, sent is the verb, it's action, so then that is your direct object. And of course, me comes underneath sent because that's to whom it was sent. This is your indirect object. You sent who or what to whom. So indirect objects come down here. Okay. So let's look at 71. Relative adverbs and pronouns. So in the following sentences, we're going to underline each adjective clause. Circle the relative word and label it as RP for relative pronoun or RA for relative adverb. Draw an arrow from each relative word back to its antecedent in the independent clause. These sentences are taken from Herman Melville's classic novel, Moby Dick. Some have been slightly changed. Okay. So, now remember, relative pronoun that is an adjective. I don't have those written down. I really need to have those written down. You know what? I'm just going to look back. I have the packet that y'all use right in front of me. So, we're just going to write this down. I'm going to write it down for myself. So, I've got who, whom, whose, which, and that. And then the relative adverbs are where, when, and why. So it's going to be easy. Okay, so he's the bird what catches the worm. Okay, so in this one, this is a relative pronoun. Now, this is what, but I think, see, it just doesn't tell me anything, but I'm thinking that this is supposed to be that. I'm thinking, because what doesn't even make sense. But he's the bird. I think that should be that catches the worm. Okay, so that would be your relative pronoun. So what does this refer back to? It refers back to the bird. All right, so let's look at this one. The sea is a green pasture where our children's grandchildren will go for bread. Okay, so we've got our word where, and this is a relative adverb because it tells where. And what does this refer back to? Refers back to pasture because it's where. In the distance lay a ship whose furled sails conveyed a warning. Whose, and that is a relative pronoun referring back to ship. Nantucket was her great original, the Tower of this Carthage, the place where the first dead American whale was stranded. All right. Oh, we're not underlining. I'm sorry. We're supposed to be underlining the adjective clause. Okay, so right here, that catches the worm, and where our grandchildren will go for bread, and then whose furled sails conveyed a warning, and then we're on this one now. All right, Nantucket was her great original, Tower of this Carthage, the place where. All right, where. This is a relative adverb, and the clause that goes with it is where the first dead American whale was stranded, and that tells about the place. Okay, you look out a glass window where the frost is all on the outside. That would be where. This would be a relative adverb. Where the frost is all on the outside, telling about the window. Some few hands are called shipkeepers, whose province it is to work the vessel. Okay, we'll underline the clause first. Whose province it is to work the vessel. Our word is whose, and this is a relative pronoun. And this is telling about the shipkeepers. Father Maple was in the hardy winter of an old age, which was merging into a second flowering youth. Good. The ostensible reason why Ahab did not go on board was the coming storm. Okay. The Guernsey man, who had just got into the chains, had slung his nose in a sort of bag. This one's easy. It's always easy when they set it off there with commas. We'll learn about something about those pretty soon. It's a little bit different. This is a relative pronoun. It's talking about the Guernsey man. Okay. We should be furnished with the reason why his sense of smell seems obliterated. You should be catching on to this now. He scarce heeds the moment when he drops seething into the yawning jaws awaiting him. Okay. This was written at a time when the whalebone was largely used in ladies' bodices. When always tells us that it's An adverb. Okay, one more. I was he whom the fates ordained to take the place of Ahab's bowsman. Okay, you should have that pretty well down now. Let's look at our next section, 71B. Here it says draw a caret in front of each adjective clause and insert the missing relative pronoun. For the purposes of this exercise, which and that may be used interchangeably. Okay, so for myself, I'm just going to put a W or a T. Okay, Reykjavik is one of the finest cities I have visited. Okay, it could go here, and it could be which or that. I'm not even going to put it. You put it whichever one you want. It can be which or that. The elderly woman you met is not my grandmother. The elderly woman whom you met. Remember, has to be, it can't be who, has to be whom, because she received it. The giraffe we saw was extremely tall and ravenously hungry. That or which. The painting you admired was painted by me. That or which. Of all the songs I have ever heard, this was the saddest. That, or I guess which. The sloppy language the writer used is disgraceful. That or which. The heritage seeds we planted have sprouted. That or which. All right. So, on our own paper, diagram the following sentences from your first two exercises. The sea is a green pasture where our children's grandchildren will go for bread. That's one. That's the first one we're going to do. The second one's a little bit long. All right, so let's do this one. The sea is a green pasture. All right, so let me... I know when I do these with y'all, it really makes this a very long lesson, and you can use it to your heart's content. Fast forward, rewind, whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter to me. Okay, so the sea, I have this in front of me, is a green pasture where our children's grandchildren will go for bread. Okay. So I'm going to make this a hair bit bigger. Woo! Not move it. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Then we're going to mark the sentence because to me it's just so much easier when you mark the sentence. Okay. So the sea is a green pasture. Here's our where. Okay, this is an adverb. This is a relative adverb telling where. Where our children's grandchildren will go for bread. Pardon me. All right, so this is our, we're just going to kind of circle this here to kind of get it out of the way, so to speak. Okay, so let's go ahead and mark the independent clause. The sea is a green pasture. All right, so is our verb, it's linking. See is our subject. See is who or what. See is pasture. All right, just got something from Callie. Okay, see is pasture. This would make it a PN. Okay, and then and green are adjectives that go with this. The is a special adjective that goes with see, so we got this down. Now, where is what is it talking about? It's talking, where is telling us where the pasture's at, right? Okay, where our children's grandchildren will go for bread. Okay, so for bread would be a prepositional phrase. Will go is our verb. who or what will go? I guess it would be grandchildren would be your subject. I'm guessing. That's kind of weird, isn't it? And so these two then would be our children's. Okay, so our is an adjective because it's answering whose. It's an adjective modifying this word. And this word is an adjective modifying this word. Okay, so these are adjectives. Okay, let's see if we can do this. You're welcome to pause it and do it yourself if you want to and then check it. So we're going to go ahead and do this first. Okay. Now, we have diagrammed this first part. So now let's go ahead and put our adverb clause. Now it's an adverb clause, so it's telling us about pasture. Remember just a few minutes ago where we were finding the clause and then circling the word and drawing a line to what it was modifying? Well, the reason we were doing that is so that when we diagram it, we'll know under where it goes. So on this one, we know that where was telling us where the pasture is. So that's where we're going to put it on this one. Now, let's go ahead and diagram this clause. So our verb is will go. Our subject is grandchildren. Now, children's, like I said, is an adjective that's modifying grandchildren, which there should be a dash in there. So I'm just going to put, child. Okay, that's children's. Now, our is a pronoun acting as an adjective telling whose children's. So it actually comes off of here. Our wouldn't go under grandchildren because it's actually saying our children's grandchildren. So that's why our would come off of child and not grandchildren. Now, we've already done will go. Now we need to put where, the word where, and we need to put our prepositional phrase for bread. Now, where is telling us where we're going to go. So where goes here, and our prepositional phrase tells us about we're going to go for bread. So we have our preposition and then come off of here, and we're going to put our OP, which is bread. One more little thing. We've got to connect the word where to here, because the reason why is when whatever word we connect to up here tells us what it is. So we're just gonna do this. Ta-da! There you go. That tells us that this is adverbial. It's an adverb clause. Okay. All right. So let's get rid of this. Now, what I'm going to do is, because I know this is a very long lesson and I am so sorry, but I don't know how else to teach it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more with you. And then I'm going to have you do the other ones yourself. I know I should help you do all of them, but it will just literally make for a very, very long video. So let's go ahead and do this next one. Nantucket. Now, if you want to just go ahead and turn it off, you be my guest. All right, I may have misspelled something in there. I tried not to. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our pen ready here. We're going to go ahead and mark our sentence. Okay, this is kind of a long one. Now here's our where. As you know, we're looking for our little keywords here. So here's our where. Okay, so where the first dead American whale was stranded. Okay, and this tells us about place. So we know that when we do our diagramming, where is going to be with, it's going to be touching place, basically. Then you got to figure out where goes. We'll get there. Okay, so Nantucket was her original blah, blah, blah. Let's see if we have any prepositional phrases in here. Okay, of this Carthage is a prepositional phrase. Okay, was is our verb. Nantucket is our subject. Okay, so we'll look for a, since we have a linking verb, we need to look for a PA or PN. Okay, so Nantucket was original, tire, and place. Okay, these tell what they are. What Nantucket was, original, so this is a PA. It was the tire, so tire. Now I know that's actually a place. It's a place in the Middle East, or it was an ancient place. I don't think it's there anymore. It's gone, but it's not referring in this sentence. If you'll read the sentence correctly in its content, tire is not talking about a place. It's telling that it is that. So we'll say this is a PN, and then it was a place. That's a PN. Okay. Now, and then her and great are adjectives that go along with this adjective. These two adjectives are modifying this, both of them. Her original, great original. So these both modify original. Okay, with tire, the modifies tire. And then of this Carthage goes with tire. It's a prepositional phrase that goes with tire. It's telling about that. All right, and then the place. Okay, so let us modify, let us diagram it. Now remember, we're going to have a compound predicate, adjective, predicate, noun. So it's going to go let's go up here. It's going to go something like this. Okay, first we'll do our subject. I'm just putting Nantucket. And then our verb is was. Okay, then remember we do this. Now, here's where we got to go out for the first one. Then we're going to have another one. We have a third one. Okay, so we don't have, they didn't use any conjunctions like and, but, or. So we don't have a conjunction here. We don't have to put one here. So you can just leave it blank if you want to. You just know that they've connected these with commas. So that's all we need to know. All right, so original goes here. We'll go ahead and put these on here. And then tire goes here. And then place goes here. Okay, so with original, we're going to have her and great. So I'm not going to write it. It's too crazy for me to do it with this thing. Well, I can try. So her, great. Those are adjectives modifying original. And then tire, we have the. It's an article. And then of this Carthage is a prepositional phrase that belongs with tire. So here's our preposition. Here's our OP. So it is of, and then Carthage. Put that. And then this is an adjective that goes with Carthage in that prepositional phrase. All right. And then we have the for place. Okay, so here we have the first, the independent clause of this sentence done, but as we can see, it's not completely done yet because now we have to diagram this part. So let us make another diagramming thing. I'm sorry, my computer's kind of behind. Okay, so, well, we haven't marked this part, have we? Okay, so was stranded is our verb. Well is our subject. I guess we don't need to underline that twice. And then we have the first dead American are all adjectives that go with well. So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to put was stranded as our verb. And then well is our subject.
Oh my gosh.
Now, so here we have the first dead American. So I'm not going to write that in there, but I'm letting you know that's where they go. So the first dead American. Okay. Now the only word we haven't put yet is the word where. So where does go with place, so we're going to have to make sure that where is connected to that. Okay, but it goes with, because it's adverbial, it's going to go with the verb. Was stranded, and then where just tells about where it was stranded. Now, there you go. All right. I know that looks crazy, and you're probably going, whew, right now. All right, so you've got 1, 2, 3 more to do. So I'd like for you to pause it. Don't worry if you get it wrong. Just do the best you can do, and then I want you to check it, okay? So go ahead and pause and finish those 3. All right, I know this is such a long video, and I apologize. Let me go ahead and find the answers here, and then you can be done with this lesson. Let's see. All right, so here's these 2. Okay, that is all for today.